Hello beautiful people, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Sophia. I'm a graduate of NYU and I make videos about education and lifestyle. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you so much for being here again and for sharing this moment with me. In this video, I wanted to continue talking about my experience at NYU, but not so much on the academic side. Now I wanted to touch more on the social side, what it's like living in New York City, as well as the economic or financial aspect of living in New York and attending NYU. Obviously, everything that I'm sharing here is completely based on my experience. This is just what I saw, felt, and experienced while I was at NYU during those 3 years from 2019 to 2022. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first thing, and probably one of the biggest things, is social life at NYU. NYU is an incredible school, but it is definitely very strange socially. NYU doesn't really have a campus. All of the buildings are sort of sprawled around downtown Manhattan. Most of the buildings are around the area of Washington Square Park. There's no real campus like Columbia or Harvard or other schools, but everyone treats Washington Square Park as if it was the Quad. So if you've ever been to that area, you've probably run into a lot of NYU students. So the park kind of becomes a place where most people congregate. NYU is also an extremely large school, which also makes the social situation a bit more complex. I think each undergrad class has somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 students, which is a lot. And then you add all of the people in the classes above you, below you, and also in grad school, and you have a school of tens of thousands of people, which can be really incredible because you can connect with a lot of very interesting people, but it can also be very stressful and overwhelming. So that's a little bit of context on social life at NYU. Having said that, yes, making friends at NYU can be very hard. That's also going to depend on you. I think when I got into NYU and when I first started going to classes and everything, making friends was definitely very challenging for me. I don't consider myself to be a naturally extroverted person. I think that's something that I've had to work on a lot when I was at NYU and beyond. And also making friends is a very necessary skill. Wherever you live and whatever you do, it's definitely a skill and it can be very, very challenging. Having said all of that, it is definitely possible to make friends at NYU. Sometimes it's just going to require you to step out of your comfort zone a little bit, try different things. In terms of how I made friends when I was at NYU, I tried to contact or meet a lot of people before classes started. So I followed a lot of Instagram pages, I was in different text and WhatsApp groups, and so I started hearing about other people through there. I think before classes started, I went to a few of the freshman events and I met some people that I had already met online, which was really cool, and I think that's definitely a great way to make friends. So if you're going into your freshman year or you're transferring, try to see who's already at the school or who's also going to be in your class, and I think try to connect with people before classes actually start. And in terms of other ways that I made friends, I also made friends through dorm or residential life. My first few weeks at NYU, I was in a different dorm than where I ended up spending the rest of my freshman year, or well, the rest of my freshman semester, because in my second semester, COVID happened and I went home. The really great thing about the dorms at NYU is that some dorms are very communal, and especially if you live on a themed floor. So while I was at NYU, I eventually transitioned to a themed floor, which was the Latino floor at Lipton Hall. And I think living in these floors is a great way to have a little bit more community while you're in school, because a lot of these floors have like RAs that are very interested in the specific topic, people who organize events, and I think these also create an environment where people want to be more social because you're bonded around a common interest, or in my case, a nationality or background. Another really useful way to meet people and make friends while you're at NYU is through clubs and societies. This wasn't so much the case for me because I was only involved in things in my senior year, which I definitely do regret. I wish that I had gotten more involved in club life while I was in my freshman year and not so much in my senior year when I was a little overwhelmed and wasn't really prioritizing making friends. But I would definitely say try to go to the club fair, try to join clubs, try to be involved with people who have similar interests to you. I think this is just a natural way to connect with people and to form friendships. Hello, ran into some technical difficulties with my camera. I am filming this on another day, different camera, so hopefully this should work out. But as I was saying, going back to the social life at NYU, dorm life can be a great way to make friends. Joining clubs and participating in social life at NYU is also another great way to make friends. I only joined some clubs in my senior year, which were the Politics Society and in the Zeitgeist, which was our politics magazine. But joining those was definitely a great way to meet new people and also to meet people who had similar interests to me, which in this case was politics. Other than dorm life and joining clubs, another way to make friends is simply to talk to people in your classes. Depending on how extroverted or introverted you are, this might seem challenging, or this might be something that you might not feel comfortable doing. In my college, the College of Arts and Sciences, some of the classes were extremely large, like 150, 200 people. So in those classes, it was definitely more difficult to talk to people and to make genuine connections. But in some of my smaller classes, as a more introverted and reserved person, I was able to meet people more easily and to make friends. And in one of my classes, I made some of my best friends from all of my NYU experience, which was great. And I still talk to them today. We go to brunch every 2 months or so. So meeting people, especially in your small classes, can be a really, really good way to make friends. And I would say my experience in terms of making friends was primarily a combination of meeting people in the dorms initially, and then also meeting people in my classes. And I would say the people that I met in clubs were more acquaintances, but they were still great, and I still talk to some of them today. Another thing that I did not mention because I didn't actually participate in are sororities and fraternities. These are also a way that a lot of people make friends while they're in college here in the US. NYU does have some active sororities and fraternities. In general, Greek life is not as big as in some other schools, especially schools in the South, but the sororities that do exist are pretty active. So I would say you are coming to NYU and that's something that you might be interested in. You could rush and meet people through a sorority or through a fraternity. That just wasn't my case because that wasn't necessarily something that I was interested in doing. But I know lots of people who were in sororities, and some of them made friends with their sorority sisters and are connected with people that way. Moving on to the next aspect of my NYU experience, which was living in New York City. Living in New York was one of my lifelong dreams. I fell in love with the city the first time I visited when I was 13, and since that moment I was determined to live there at some point. So coming to live in New York City was a huge dream and a major accomplishment for me. So having said that, I am extremely grateful that I was able to live in New York during college and now that I'm working full-time. New York City is an incredibly beautiful city. There is so much to do. There are some amazing works of architecture. Museums in the city have some of the best works of art. There's a super rich cultural life, and you never run out of things to do or places to eat, which is amazing. It's definitely an important city and a center of cultural life here in the US, and I would say comparable to other large cities that I've lived in, like Paris. Of course, there are also drawbacks to living in New York City. New York is very loud. It can be extremely chaotic. The city itself is not that clean. And another major thing that New York City has against it, which leads me to my third and final point, is finance. New York is an incredibly expensive city, and NYU is an incredibly expensive school. If you've seen some of my videos, you will know that one of the factors that made me choose NYU was the fact that I got a scholarship. This scholarship was merit-based and it covered approximately half of my tuition. So that made NYU a lot more affordable for me. Of course, it was still not affordable, but it made it a bit more accessible. That's the reason I was able to go to NYU, because I received this scholarship. But going to NYU itself was still extremely expensive. Even after tuition, which was a significant amount, there were fees for being an international student, health insurance, books, random expenses that would come up that were college related. And then after being in college, all of my immigration fees for submitting my OPT and my STEM extension. So overall, living in New York City and attending NYU were both extremely expensive. Having said this, one of the ways that I made it work for me was having a job all throughout college. I didn't have the same job. I had different jobs, but every year that I was at NYU, which were 3 years because I graduated a year early, I was employed by NYU on a part-time basis. Having these jobs throughout college allowed me to have a bit more money and to be able to cover all of these expenses that would come up, as well as pay for some of my living costs and expenses. If you live in New York City or you're coming to college in the city, I would definitely recommend getting a job at least part-time, because living in the city is extremely expensive and it's only gotten more expensive after COVID, unfortunately. So I guess that is kind of a summary of my NYU experience in terms of everything that was not academic related. So social life, living in New York City, and financial life. I know that in this video I mentioned a lot of negative points, but I genuinely want to reiterate that going to NYU and living in New York City were both a dream come true. And I am so incredibly grateful that I had the opportunity to do those things, and that my dream of living in New York came true at such a young age. And it's so funny that I can say this now, because a lot of the time while I was in NYU, I wasn't super happy. And my first semester, I even considered dropping out or transferring, but definitely my last semesters kind of turned everything around for me. So I'm super grateful for that. And I left NYU with some of my best friends, which I will have in my life forever, having accomplished my dream of living in New York and also having a full-time job, which I can't be more grateful for. So those are my thoughts on NYU and my experience there. And as I said, overall, very positive. I feel extremely lucky to have gone there. I know NYU is definitely a dream school for a lot of people because of admissions requirements, as well as for the exceptionally high cost of attendance. But if NYU is a dream school for you, I would say don't give up. Even though the admission system is difficult to navigate and the financial aid situation is even more difficult, there are a lot of resources out there. I consider myself to be one of them. So as always, if you have any questions about attending NYU, affording NYU, living in New York City, make sure to leave them in the comments or reach out to me through my Instagram, which is linked below. That's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for being here with me during these past few minutes. I'll see you all in my next video.
My darling, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you.